Hello everyone, welcome to Btec Philosophers, episode 53 with me, Elliot Steele.
Michael Odewale, I thought you were doing it for me, bro. It just threw me off.
You can see we got the chemistry already.
Yeah, man. You're fucking nailing it.
We got someone who's created one of Britain's biggest podcasts in the studio, and we fucked up. We fucked up on being able to bring each other into the conversation. I was just on mic going, nah, we're like quite organised here. We've got shit going.
1 year of chemistry, right there.
Yesterday messaging Francis because we hadn't booked the studio. Hey, you said 5:15's all right. And like, you know when you try to put it on the guest or something?
Yeah,
How have you been, man? It's good to see you.
It's all right, man. This reminds me of like when we did our America tour, we interviewed Theo Von. And,
fuck yeah.
And we did it directly after Rogan, and we had a massive blunt on Rogan. And we were fucked up, right? So I was trying to be professional because Theo is one of my favourite all-time comics. And I was doing the intro, and he was like pissing himself laughing. He just went, "You've got to do better than that, man. You've got to do better than that, bro."
But Theo Von seems like a naturally high personality. I don't know if he smokes, but he just kind of got that sort of off-kilter saying random stuff. Did it work?
Mate, I'll tell you, he's one of the most naturally funny people. I remember, so we were doing it, and I was trying to do the intro, and he kept laughing. He went, "You guys have, we call it artism."
Oh, that's funny, man.
He,
What's American weed like? Do you smoke a lot in the British shit?
Mate, listen, I've come to the conclusion, like, everything they do over there is bigger than better.
Damn.
You know, you want weed, they do it better. You want stand-up, you want podcasting, you want crime, everything there is bigger and better.
It's just like slightly better, majorly better.
It's capitalism, but like on an ultra level. Like whenever I go out there, you're like, "This is amazing," and then you run out of money, and you're like, "Get me the fuck out of here!" Like, they do, you know, they're like a stripper. Like the minute you're giving the money's there, it's great. The minute it's gone, they're just over with someone else.
Being poor in America, fucking hell, that's gotta be tough, man. They do poverty differently there as well, man.
Yeah.
Going like the inner cities and that, it's fucking crazy. And they'll give you like cheese. That's it. It's that government cheese.
There's government cheese.
That's what government give you. Have you heard of that?
No.
Government like will give you like a block of cheese to like in the projects and that. Like you go like.
Can we fact check that, please?
I've heard rappers say it like.
I don't mean cheese is like money.
No, they give you a block of government cheese as like a little package.
What, like some Federal Reserve cheese?
Yeah. Just to be like, this is your dairy. This is like your calorie intake.
This is your calcium for the year.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're gonna get 32 ounces or nearly a kilogram of cheese. Doesn't say what type.
Who designed that? Whose idea
I bet it was Nixon. It was like, "Hey, on drugs? I'll give some cheese. Oh, fine. No.
Yeah, when you're interviewing, like, you know, doing like triggernometry, I was just to say, like, you host triggernometry, and when you're interviewing, because whenever I've listened to it, I mean this is in the nicest way possible. What I'm always amazed by with you and Constantine is that you bring on people like I was listening to someone who does Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Who, if you were sat next to at a dinner party,
Yeah.
you would immediately be like, "Oh, fucking hell, when we go in, like, this guy keeps back." But you guys actually make them like interesting, and you're very good at getting to the thing of like, what do you believe and what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, how did you sort of find out you could do that?
Well, I think the way we approach it is like this. Triggernometry is a podcast which is about big ideas. Whatever it is, whether it's about Bitcoin, which is a future currency, whether it's about, you know, talking about philosophy. And we wanted to take that and then make it accessible for everybody. I hate these podcasts where people just go say words like, conjugate and all these kind of things. And your ideas, the idea of the person isn't interesting. They're just trying to make it seem more interesting by making their language more complex. And what I wanted to do is a podcast which was about big ideas, but make it accessible. So it didn't matter who a person was. Like, I get van drivers coming up to me, I get city boys, I get everybody, right?
Right.
As long as they're white and male.
I was about to say that. You saw his van driver, and I was waiting for like, and rappers and social workers.
You're fucking saying it, mate. I'm thinking it, you're saying it.
There's some robot.
All right, we're 4 minutes in and we found the clip.
Just imagine a roadman coming up. Hey, you ain't Shapiro, but like,
But is that because you used to be a teacher?
Yeah.
Is that something you sort of learned through teaching in, like how to? Because it works when I listen to it. I'm smart enough to know I'm dumb. So if that makes sense, I know when I, I'd like to think I'm intelligent, but I'm not. But then when I listen to, I'm like, oh, you're very good at going, wait, can you just in layman's terms or explain that to me? Whereas I think sometimes in interviews, like the person doing the interview wants to seem like they know what the fuck's going on a lot of the time, and it makes it afterwards. And that's what Rogan's always been really good at, is just bringing people on, letting them talk, and just letting them go. Like, and when people are like, why didn't you put them up on something? He's like, I didn't fucking know. That's why I always think with Rogan. I'm like, he's like, yeah. And they're like, well, why are you having medical experts on? Because if you're not a medical expert, and he's like, to chat to a medical expert to see what
from a position of zero and just learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and that's genuinely, because when it started out, we started it in 2018 because that was at the time of Brexit, and we both voted Remain, and there was this. There was this narrative.
It's a surprise to everyone.
It's a surprise to everyone. I've got a Brexit voice. I do know that, man. But and there was this narrative of like all Brexiteers being racist, and then I was like, this doesn't make sense, because I know enough about politics to know that basically every old school left winger is a Brexiteer, except back in the day they were called Eurosceptics. They weren't called Brexiteers. It was a different thing. So
That's why I voted Leave.
Did you?
Yeah.
Because that's actually the classic left-wing position.
Because famously, I think Corbyn was very anti-Brexit, but he couldn't. No, sorry, he was pro-Brexit, but he couldn't say it out loud because he didn't want to lose sort of that young left vote, and then that's probably one of the reasons he ended up losing, because nobody really knew where he stood.
Exactly. And so
just to clear it up as well, I also hate Romanians. That's one of the other reasons. I just don't want everyone to think, no, I'm joking. It was I don't trust big banking systems, and also they're gonna pick for you. No.
But so that's where it started, and like I was humble enough to know that I didn't know. I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, I know about this, and it was just in the spirit of curiosity, trying to find out what was going on. And it doesn't matter now, like when I sit down with someone, the thing that trigonometry has taught me is I'm always the most stupid person in the room. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I thought that was meant to be funny.
No, I was agreeing with you. I was agreeing. Sorry, say how that came across. I was doing that in sentiments of when I've done this podcast.
Yeah.
And we've had someone in who's a police officer or something, and explain something in a way where you realise the position you hold never had any thought to it.
Yeah.
It was just an idea that you'd seen someone tweet or a parent has given you, and then you meet someone in an actual field or something, and you go, oh fuck! I guess I don't think that, and that's I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, and so you realise, like you said, the position you hold is one that you don't actually know what you're talking about. It's a position of ignorance, and so as a result of that, you just want to find out more, and by finding out more, then you clarify your own position on what it is. Like there's loads of stuff like that we talk about, and I still don't know what I think about it. Because the more you hear from this side of the argument, and then you hear from this side. Like at the moment, we're talking to a lot of neuroscientists, and there's this guy. It's about to come out. It's a brilliant interview called Anil Seth, and Anil is a neuroscientist at Sussex University, and he talks about consciousness, and he says effectively, our version of consciousness is different for every single person. Like, do you remember when they had that blue and gold dress, and then some people saw it as blue and black? He goes, if we can't agree on what colour a dress is, then how can we possibly agree on more complex and difficult subject matters? We're just never going to be able to do it, because what happens is our brains are filtered all this information, and then it's assembled in our brains, and then we create this image of the world. But your image of the world, my image of the world, your image of the world is then filtered for our experiences, what we think, our brain chemistry, etc., etc., etc. So it just makes you realise, like, no one knows anything, really.
So are you applying this to like the so-called, we call the culture wars, when we see people just being like, a lot of people fighting, and we're not necessarily supposed to agree on everything, of course not. Do you know what I mean? But like, what is the common ground that we are supposed to? Because do you think things feel a little bit, we're in a bad place right now in terms of discourse and dialogue?
I think so. I think we're in a terrible place for discourse and dialogue.
So what would be the ideal sort of place to get to then? Because I don't really know what that would be.
I think ultimately the ideal place to get to is where two people can sit down, and have a discussion and disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about
not dox each other.
Yeah, at the end of it, exactly. Yeah. And and then it's about ideas. It's not about the person, because the reality is, and this is something else that you learn the more and more you go into this stuff, is that no one's being honest, even like left and right. Let's take Brexit and Remain. The Remainers aren't being honest about Brexit, and the Brexiteers aren't being honest about Brexit. So what actually happens is two sides are arguing because they want to win, but as a result of that, like they say, the first casualty of war is always truth. So no one's actually being honest in what's going on.
But I feel like sometimes the first time a person does concede on one thing, they get used as like, he's on our side. It's like, no, I was just saying this one element. Like, there's a lot of black issues where I might be like, I understand that point of view there, but you can't necessarily come out and say it because, you might people on the right being like, well, you see, he's with us. It's like, oh, no, I'm not saying all of that. I'm just saying it's not as black and white, no pun intended, as things look sometimes, you know what I mean?
Of course.
But you feel like you have to then just, I might as well just stay on this side and just shut up about my reservations on whatever. Yeah. Because it's easier than that nuanced place where, I could be used as sort of the face of something I didn't want to be the face of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think ultimately, and this is something that we all need to get to, and this is where it's really tough, is you don't want to be part of a tribe, Michael. Because the moment you're part of a tribe, you give up your individuality, and you give up nuance, and you give up actually being authentic as a human being. Because you'll have some positions where you're on the right, you'll have some positions where you're in the centre, and you'll have some positions where you're on the left. Everybody's like that. Practically everybody. It's very few people who are all the time on the left or all the time on the right.
Yeah.
So what you want to get to is a place where you're like, well, for instance, I don't know, on economics, you might be a little bit more on the right. Culturally, you might be a little bit more on the left. When it comes to, like, I don't know, things like immigration, you might be a bit more in the centre, whatever it may be. But if you do that, then you will know that at least you're being honest.
Yeah.
And also, once you start doing that, then you're open to change. And once you're open to change, you're open to growing as an individual.
When did it, so like going back and you started doing it about Brexit and all of these things, when was it that you sort of realised like, oh fuck, we're onto something here? Like we've actually got something that people like resonate with, or that, or that you're going out there. And there's certain levels, like as I do podcasts, if it's, I understand, so if it's about like marketing and things like that, but there is a thing where if you do have a podcast created by people within the industry who probably at the time wouldn't be given something by the industry, sorry, let me just get my words right. It then creates this sort of like, I do look at these things in the world of podcasts and stuff now and go, oh, how is that overlooked? Like, how did nobody look at that and find these people who've built a thing out of their own back, and the industry can't, it should be the job of the industry to see that and find that early on and fund something like that and go, oh, okay, we might even disagree with what these people are saying or how they go about their practices in terms of who they book and their art and stuff, but it's important to have a thing where that exists. And it just sort of baffles me a little bit that we're in this place in the UK and in the West a lot at the moment where I'm very left wing, but I feel like we're not allowing there's like you have to be left wing all the way and not, you can't then go, maybe we shouldn't give 8-year-olds like gender reassignment surgery. If they can't vote, they probably shouldn't, you know.
Let them go to war first.
And it's just a little bit like at the moment on the left, I find you go. So sorry, what I was just saying is like, when did you get to a point there where you realised you had something that people were into it and invested in it?
Well, the time that I realised that people were starting to get invested in it was we interviewed an evolutionary psychologist called Dr. Deanna Fleischman. And she's a brilliant, really, really fascinating woman. And we were talking, about the difference between men and women from an evolutionary point of view. And Adam Buxton came up to me at a gig, and he was just like, I love trigonometry. Sorry, Adam, I fucking outed you now,
we're about to get a message from his lawyers.
Exactly.
So how does that make you feel? Like you feel like people like in the industry have to tell you on the low?
Of course, man.
Does that make you feel good or bad?
Yeah, I don't know. I find it funny. It funny. Like I'm like a podcasting version of a porno, mate.
You're like someone signs up to your OnlyFans under a fake name. That's funny because we first met years ago. The Comedy Caf was, I guess, how we all got to sort of know each other, like, which was a comedy club in London that was brilliant. Yeah. And then I don't quite know what happened. So I think it was very possible that Noel, who ran it, just decided fuck everyone.
Yeah, that does sound like Noel.
And if that is what Noel has done, then God bless him. He's done it. He's an amazing person.
Thanks for the memories.
Thanks for the memories. And that is very, very possible that he's gone fuck this. Were you ever there when he decided to get up and do a set?
Yes, in the loosest possible sense of the word, man.
Noel used to run. There was this guy, Noel. He ran the Comedy Caf, just for people listening. And there'd be a Wednesday night, and it's where everyone I kind of know in comedy started. Yourselves, Jamali, Mo Gilligan, Jimmy James Jones, Ola the comedian, like Kay Kurd. There was always this sort of regular crew you'd see there.
Nabil as well.
And he, Noel would every now and then decide he was getting up. And you meant to do like 7 minutes, and I think I once saw him do 30. The most bewildered people would come in for a free comedy show, and he would crush.
Because he didn't give a fuck.
He didn't give a fuck. He just would get up, Jimmy, I'm going on, and that was it. But yeah, man, there's do you think like it's sort of bit like starting in stand up when you started, now hosting this podcast? What have you seen in the landscape change? That sort of, do you think, for the better?
For the better. So I think. No, that's very interesting. For the better, this is for the better.
Right.
The gatekeepers don't exist anymore. The gatekeepers now, they've lost their power. They've absolutely lost their powers. It doesn't matter anymore. You can get on live at the Apollo, and all it will lead to is doing some gigs at the 99 Club.
But that is the thing we all want.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not joking. If you live in London as a comedian, that is if you get on 99.
It's a nice spot. It's a nice
you get to do 3 gigs a night, all the rest of it. But
what a sad state of affairs. That we literally as comics are more bothered about getting
home before 12. Like Cinderella.
I could be on before Match of the Day.
It's a good.
You still have to restart it. You still have to restart that. You can't.
On the iPad, but I was listening to an interview with John Bishop. He said that he was playing like rooms above a pub. He did Michael McIntyre's Roadshow. He was playing art centres. He then did Apollo. He was then playing theatres. That's gone. That's dead. That's done. That's finished. The best thing now is that whereas before you would have got amazing comedians who, because they didn't fit a certain mould, the industry wouldn't want them. Whatever it is, maybe they're too weird, maybe they're too brash, maybe they're too controversial. And it's particularly, I think in the US, they were kind of more open to that. I think in this country, there were a couple who slipped through, but I think most people had to tone down what they did. Now, you've got billions of people out there just waiting for you. This is the best thing.
And it's your fan base. Do you know what I mean? Like you said, the gatekeeper can take away your fan base by taking away TV opportunities. You've got like a podcast, you've got some sort of thing, Twitch, whatever. You can maintain your own people, and you just have to worry about, because it's your style of humor, you just have to keep entertaining them. You know what I mean? That's it.
And is there a thing as well, like in the way that like you've sort of seen podcasting? Obviously, it was like huge. You get like even when you started in 2018, like it's been around for ages. Like the explosion that's kind of happened with it. How have you seen that? Like slightly, like have you seen a lot of people try to replicate what you do with triggernometry?
Yeah, so there's there's been a few podcasts where you
call them out, fuck them.
Fucking name and shame, mate.
Bro, literally this.
Yeah. Mate, I already pissed off the entire comedy industry and the biggest podcast in the world, mate.
By the way, that was fucking like I'm gonna get shit for this, right? Because I make it no secret, I'm a massive Joe Rogan fan, right? Which is not gonna come as news to anyone, right? Yeah. And I said it as a tweet at the time. You guys did nothing different than what happens in car shares to car to
give
gigs.
Context.
When you went, so you guys went on Rogan. And you didn't mince your words what you make of the comedy industry. And I imagine, was there a point after that blunt, like in a cab elsewhere, where you sort of thought, maybe we could have not done as much cutting off of everybody? But it was very funny.
I mean, I think we all agree that American comedy, do you think it is? I mean, I think it is like a lot ahead.
No, of course it is. Of course it is. Of course it is.
But do you think that is to do with they can get away with saying more?
Yeah.
You reckon?
Yeah. When I went to Rogan's show in where was it called? Oh, fuck. They do Kill Tony there as well. I can't remember the name of the club.
Is it recorded in Texas, right?
It's in Austin. So his club, I can't remember what I think it's something like the Anvil, whatever it is. And like the sets they were doing, I was a bit like, whoa, that's a bit much.
Yeah, right.
You know, you just couldn't do that.
Is it on the artist or the audience? Who's holding back in terms of?
Well, no, the audience don't give a fuck, man.
Yeah.
Is that a thing where they've created that out there? And we were talking before the pod. We all do Top Secret a lot and stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason I am the comedian and get the opportunities I am today is because of that place. Really.
Yeah, of course.
There are times though where there are audiences there where you go, oh, you guys are 19 and haven't been told you don't matter yet.
Yeah.
Or the opinion you have has come from some. I find a lot of it, you've moved to London, you've got a lot of white guilt because you're middle class, upper middle class, you move to an area, part of the area is deprived, you live in a nice place, so that adds a level of guilt to it, that comes with that. And so now you have to go a little bit hard on like, oh, somebody on, it's not even to do with comedy, oh, they've not hired a gay actor for a gay role. Like, you have to be seen as this thing. And it's a little bit, whereas there they've sort of, I feel like because they're 10, 15 years ahead, they've sort of gone through that and they've come out the other side of it where they've got an agreement of, if you want to go and see the stuff that, like I have no problem with trigger warnings. We do that with films, 12, 15, 18. That's not a new thing. Doing that at comedy shows seems to make sense of going like, hey, you might hear some stuff at this show. I feel like they've kind of done that in a way where you'll go to a show and there's Tony Hinchcliffe, Kim Dillon, Joe Rogan, Hans Kim, people like that you know what the fuck you're going to get.
Yeah.
But we've all got bits on the line. But, I think we're good writers, good performers. That's the end of the day, that's the difference in terms of the bit is good enough where someone's like, there's a foundation behind it, and it's not just trying to be edgy, you're not just trying to do this. There's actually a foundation, and the audience will go with you. Maybe it's when you're trying it out. Now, when you're trying to work something out and it's not quite right there, that's where you might get in trouble. But I still feel like if the quality of the bit is good enough, you can get away with it, because we've all done it.
Yeah, but like Chris Rock said about like his famous
I was going to say that,
the difference between like black people and N-word, right, is like I'm not going to. Why do you got to? What do you want me to say it? And then we're already pushing it with Francis.
I'll get the blame. He wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for you. It's just me in the corner. Say it.
Did you say N-word, people? Is that what you said?
N-word? I don't know, brother. Look, I had an edible before the podcast, okay, and all right. That he couldn't write that. He couldn't write that bit today because of things. Let me just say, right? Have you ever, sometimes you're at a train station, right, and a train's coming, and you're like, I'll jump in front of the train. Like a little voice in your head. That happens to white people.
Yeah.
But with the N-word.
Right. I know you guys say it.
Sometimes you're there and you're like, I wonder what would happen if I just shouted this right now. Like it just and you have to go, whoa, let's.
I know you guys have all said it. Your combined use of saying is probably as much as mine. But even a bit like that, right? That's what I was talking about before in terms of thoughts where you couldn't vocalize it.
Yeah.
Especially now, because like Fox News will be like, see, he's one of us. And you're like, no, I made this for black people because we all know this is true.
Yeah.
But we need to have this dialogue within ourselves.
Of course.
But like now, that guy on one of the fucking Fox News guys will be like, he's one of us. And then now you get called Uncle Tom. And it's like, how do you navigate saying things that are truthful, but you don't want to be used as a tool by other people?
And I think Bill Burr said it the best. These are just jokes, and people are going to listen to it, and they're going to cut it with their own shit. You know your intention when to do it. You know that you're not trying to be malicious. You're not trying to hurt. You just want to make people laugh, right? And unfortunately, if you were going to do so for me, and this is purely subjective, for me, the best comedians are the ones who tackle those contentious issues, whatever it is. Those are the best, the most fearless comics. And if you do that kind of stuff, people are going to get upset. They just are, and there's nothing you can do about it. And also people are going to misrepresent you, and people are going to get upset. Because let's say you get to a stratospheric level comedian, right? And people love you. You're going to release a new album, and there's going to people going to be like, he's sold out, man. He's sold out. He's gone soft. They say the same about Burr. They go, he's gone soft. He's gone. No, he's just different.
He's grown as well. I was, I think this about. I was having this chat with my dad the other night about Frankie Boyle, and actually, when you look at, my dad made this point, but fucking out there now, so he made it. When I was talking about that golden era of Mock the Week, it was Frankie and Russell, and it was clearly a bear pit, but it was great. And then Frankie Boyle, some of the jokes that he done on it, you now look back at, like the one about Harvey Price, which he did get in trouble for.
The spoon one. That was funny.
No, the one about the only reason she's got to date Alex Reed, the cage fighter, is because he's the only one who can stop Harvey from fucking her. Is like it's funny, but I mean, my God, tell it. You know, I'll defend his right to say it. He's fucking about. But then years later, when I think he sort of grown as an artist and a person and probably does better stuff now, he's like sort of in a way but similar but different to Burr. People grab that bit of work and go, but you once said this, and he's like, and he
I'm now saying that.
And he's kind of got to sort of just not let that be.
You have to be almost like calm amidst the storm of everyone having opinions and just do what you think is the true artistic thing. You know what I mean?
Because a lot of it is about creating work and then just putting it out there and accepting that people are going to interpret it whatever way they want. They're just going to interpret it, and and you can be doing a bit about plastic surgery. Like, I did a video about plastic surgery and celebrities, and then it did quite well, and people were sharing it, and people were like, this is really funny, and then someone underneath, right, you're a big-nosed misogynistic prick. Saying shit like that.
I love that we do like same style videos, but you could also swap the insults that I put underneath it.
Exactly. Exactly. And so you can't control that, man.
Yeah.
You can't control that. Someone will be, and this is the thing, and this is the thing that I always find baffling, man. It's like when you have a black person who has, I wouldn't even say right of centre views. I would say mainly probably like heterodox, like slightly contrarian.
Like Nico, I like Nico. What Nico's saying at the moment. It's kind of really fun to watch.
Nico's a brilliant comic. He's a brilliant comic. Right, and I'm not saying that because he's my mate. I've bigged him up on loads of stuff, but the moment you do that, you then get black people saying racist things to them. You go, what the fuck is going on?
But you also get a lot of white liberal people being like, you're not what I think you're supposed to be. Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing where liberalism, and the left has a problem where, the minute you get, when white people call Priti Patel a coconut, you're like, you shouldn't be the one throwing that word around. That's you're and you're right. It's like this problem that liberals have where they are racist, they just don't think they're racist. And if you listen to a lot of black people speak, they go with a racist, their intention, what they are. They're a racist, and you kind of go, oh, okay. Whereas with someone who's like, well, they're a racist, but they don't know it and they disguise it, it's because they want something from you. They want you to be a certain, and I think there is a problem with that on the left, where it's like we want. Refugees welcome and stuff. One, they're not living in our area, so it's fine. And two, also until someone becomes a refugee, grows up and becomes a conservative, and then suddenly it's like you should be grateful for our, and it's like, well, no, they've got freedom of choice. That's the point of this. They're allowed to choose their opinions.
I think a lot of people using minorities as a talking point, rather than seeing them as an actual human being, and they're like they say something that was beyond the realms of what they thought. They're like, oh my goodness, you're sold out or whatever.
It leads to loads of problems like what you've got going on in Liverpool at the moment. I don't know if you see it. Oh, it's just something every week with them, isn't there?
Yeah. It just sounds so much better in a South London accent as well. Just something every week, mate. Every week I pick up the fucking paper.
Doing something wrong.
Kicking off.
I think at the prior area of Liverpool, you find a lot of people coming out from these sort of what you used to find in the EDL and things like that. People coming out and then screaming at, well, this isn't what Churchill fought for Britain. And you're like, Churchill demanded like the police go and shoot Scousers during like a trade union protest. So
it wasn't all bad then. He had his good points.
but like Liverpool, which is, you usually consider this massive left-wing city, don't buy the sun, and it's a great city, and then you have these people coming out because there's migrants put in a hotel, and it's all a complex situation because the processing thing takes forever. There's a lot of people coming over, so then they have to put people in hotels. So then people who haven't got anything all of their life are like, wait, what? Like to some people, a Travelodge is a massive thing.
Of course it is.
That's a huge fucking thing to go away and pay to sleep in another room.
Yeah. Like a caravan holidays people make fun of. Do you know people go on caravan holidays?
You said that because you were thinking of what poor white people do. And try save it.
Like when you guys go Butlins. I know it means a lot to you.
But like this is like a level of people that probably don't get to do those sorts of things. And then so just the idea that someone's in a hotel is already an anomaly to them. And they then go out and are like, well, no one's giving me fucking anything in life. And these people come over here and they're giving fucking everything. And then these people do move into the areas they live in and there's more of a social program for them, or there's more of a community thing because a load of them moved in together, that they create like a community centre. There's this thing. People don't necessarily integrate in the way people think they do. And that creates a load of racial tension. And then the left come along and go, look at these fucking racists. And you go, no. Right, they are. But look at why that's happened. They're failed by the system as well. And you're not going to get anywhere without explaining that to these people. That the guy who's moved in isn't your enemy. It's the fucking system that's there where a government who takes... People can hand out fucking millions of pounds to each other on PPE contracts and then just turn this like little stove on to get the culture war going. And the immigrant one's been done for time, where they get people to turn in on each other, and then that becomes a massive argument and nobody's achieved anything.
Yeah.
You know, in the back in the day, like slaves, like former slaves and like poor white people used to try and link up, form like a union. But then, like, the higher-ups, they just shut that down. They were like, fuck. These guys figure out that, like, they need each other, then, it's fucked.
But it's also, the thing is, and it's such a good point, Elliot, because we're not having honest conversations. That is a problem. Like, you listen to people on the left, and they'll just say things like, well, I think we need open borders.
Mental.
And you go, our NHS is failing. I mean, that's just objective. Our schools are crumbling. The infrastructure doesn't work. There obviously needs to be a cap on immigration. And all you're doing by not restricting the boats have come over largely because it's the gangsters running it. The gangs that run it.
Yeah.
So loads of those people, they pay literally thousands of pounds to be put in a dinghy and then shipped over here. And you're by not dealing with the problem, you're inadvertently funding organised crime. And as a result, unfortunately, you always get these horrible cases where it overturns in the channel on a choppy sea and everyone dies.
Yeah.
So you need to talk about the problem and you need to deal with it honestly. And by just like saying things like racist or whatever else, it's not going to solve it. I remember we had a journalist on called Ed West. He's a conservative journalist. And he said one of the most profound things I've ever heard. He goes, free speech is important because if you're not prepared to talk about a problem honestly and every facet of the problem, then you have no hope of solving it.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a guest on who's like surprised you, like good or bad way? Just like
lots of them.
Yeah. Who surprised you in a? I don't know if I say a name, but to give you some context, who surprised you in a bad way? Like you thought you would have sort of a more in-depth conversation, it's turned into something else.
Who surprised me? That's really interesting. You know what? You know what's really interesting is you see a lot of people who are big online and they do like content and, they've got these pieces that bang and then they go viral. And then you talk to them, there ain't a lot there.
And there's not a lot of depth behind it.
Yeah.
Do you meet people on a side who you think like you're both left and right? Fuck knows I've met some people on the left who are like this, where you're like, I don't think you believe a lot of this shit.
Yeah,
I don't think you. I think this is a paycheck. Like I know. I think they comes like a religious thing where they can't deny. Any. Do
you think that's good or bad? Like, is it just like any means possible to get the money?
I think people start playing like, I've listened to like Ben Shapiro on things, and I've very rarely found myself agreeing with him to the point where I've seen him, and someone made a good point. Ben Shapiro is amazing at arguments from what I've seen. He's amazing at winning debates against 18-year-old girls at a university, and then the minute he's sat in front of someone who's a little bit like, yeah, you probably shouldn't, Ben Shapiro wrote that, I think it's great when like someone in Afghanistan gets blown up and not an American troop. And it's like, right, what did you mean?
Like, you're beefing him right now, aren't you?
Yeah, no, not Shapiro. No, Matt. Yeah.
Who are you beefing?
I stuck it on him.
Oh, shit.
This is our serious journalism.
Yeah. So, moving on.
Oh, fuck. Is it really that bad?
Yeah. No, it's all right. It's all right. We're trying to calm it down.
Oh, right. Okay. So not the place there.
Yeah.
Throwing some fire on.
But look, I agree with you in that I think the problem is that we've got a lot of political commentators, and you see them a lot, and they talk about everything, right? Afghanistan, epidemiology, the political crisis in the UK, the economic crisis in the UK, the migrant crisis, the NHS. You're like, do you know every single thing about each of these things in the depth that is required in order to have a nuanced and balanced opinion, or are you just winging it?
Yeah. I find that though, like, because I have like a lot of friends from home. You had him on recently, like Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
Nigel Farage resonates with them, and at first I was kind of like, oh, that's a bit icky. And then when like you speak to them and find out why, I feel like a little bit that they've bought into this, the same as like a Boris Johnson did, where they had this. I'm just speaking how it is, and then they and whenever BBC comedy panel shows did this thing where they took the piss out of Nigel Farage and then wouldn't understand why he's on Question Time. I'm like, you've satirised him and he's not a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is clued up enough to run a party. He's not stupid.
Yeah.
You've satirised him to the point where people have looked at him, laughed, and then gone, but he's not wrong on that though.
Yeah.
Like, he's not wrong on that, and you've created that thing. I think like a bit of the sort of comedy community has a place to has a part to play in the rise of someone like, and mainly Nigel Farage and himself. But did you find when you met him, would you say like, because he strikes me as someone who's a little bit like, I'm like, I don't know if you think everything you're saying is true. Like, I don't know if if the powers that he's playing with are necessarily that he understands what he's doing. Like,
yeah. I think the thing is that you have to the thing that you need to understand with Nigel, whether you agree or disagree, and I disagree with him on quite a lot, is that Nigel is the most talented politician of his era. If you think about it, think what Nigel did. Nigel started out and he was a joke figure. He was a joke. He was getting less votes than the monster raving loony party, right? Screaming Lord Such. He was a punchline. To then create UKIP, which, although it didn't, I think on one election it won 4 million votes, which was enough for the Tory party to shit their pants and then do a referendum, to then take that referendum and then win it, okay? And this is what I said to Eddie Izzard when I was open for him, when he was like, it was saying to me, I dislike him and blah, blah, blah. And I said, Eddie, you can dislike him, and that is your right to dislike him, and you can hate everything about his politics. The problem with your side of the argument is, Eddie, you don't understand why he won, and you don't want to understand.
Right.
And by doing that, you are doomed to failure every single time. Because if you don't understand why you've lost, then how are you possibly expecting to win next time round?
Yeah, and would you say like it like links back to that thing like we were talking about people in Liverpool at the moment, like protesting, like hotel, things like that? I think it goes back to there's a class of people in the UK. I'll speak to you about this. Like you can't keep having a thing where it's like you go again. Panel shows and stuff like that, where the joke of every punchline is white people in a majority white country.
It's so reliable, though.
It is. If it works, it works. It does. And look, I've done it as well when I'm at top six. Look at these white people, but you're also don't think about it. But where you have that and have someone who privately educated, where working class white people don't see themselves as in a position of power.
Because they're not, Elliot.
I know.
Not.
But then, so attacking the idea, which a majority of the country is, you're alienating them from a side, the side that I think there's a lot of points on, that are a lot of good points.
You think that still happens, though? The whole subjugating of working class white people?
No, it's less and less. But there was a period where I think what happens is a lot of that stuff has shown itself up for. It's like this might be a little bit off point, but the film The Whale, there was like a fat activist, right, wrote a blog about it, about how this film was really disrespectful to fat people for showing how fat people come fat, and it's like, well, you've actually done a very reductive. That's like the same as a Christian coming out who's watched a film and gone, this film is anti-Jesus, and you're like, what? What do you on it? What do you mean by? And you've reduced something to a very narrow worldview, to a very blindsided way that doesn't allow you to understand art, doesn't allow you to understand anything cultural, to understand why people might think a different way, because you're so blindsided by this. I think the same way I think now a little bit like everyone who's like used white people as a joke, it has come a little bit, everyone's like, yeah, we kind of get what you're doing now a little bit more. There's a little bit more of that. And I think it's bigger in America as well than it is here. But you look at like the people who went and did that, to defend the statues. I couldn't fundamentally disagree with them more, and not imagine a bigger waste of my time than going to defend an inanimate object.
Yeah.
But they thought their sovereignty was under attack. They went there because they were because the newspapers in this country and everyone had been locked inside facilitated. The Churchill statue gets vandalised on nearly every protest because it is a thing near the centre. If you put a statue of Winnie the Pooh there, it would get vandalised. It's in an area where people are protesting. You get that amount of people, someone's going to do something to something. And then the papers took that and ran with it, and one side then went and got rid of the Carlson statue, which I agree with, and then another side was going but when you look at what these people did, they're probably some guy from, I don't know, Skegness, who's up to his neck in credit card debt, who then has been taught in school that his granddad fought in the war and that's a great thing, and he fought under Winston Churchill, and there'd have been a Winston Churchill poster of speech in his class, and he spent all his life working, and then suddenly he opens up the Sun one day and it's like, Black Lives Matter is trying to take Winston Churchill from you, and then all of this stuff.
Not Winston.
He's gonna immediately go, the same way like some people, you see it with like either Andrew Tate at the moment or Bill Cosby, where people be like, no, he didn't do all of that stuff, and you're like, you can look at the history of Churchill and it's fucking horrific parts of it, but he also won the war.
The nuance of it, of being able to look at those two things, and I don't know, because that's the whole thing about nuance. It doesn't always sit easy. That's why we go, this way or that way, because it's easy like that. Nuance, it makes you feel uncomfortable, and I think, I don't know, we have to learn how to deal with this uncomfortableness of not having a right or wrong answer in sort of reasonable ways, but we're still figuring it out. Yeah, and
look, I completely agree, and that's why when you sit down and have a conversation with Farage, it's very uncomfortable as a former old school lefty to go, oh, you got a point there,
right? Yeah,
you've got a point, and because until we can do that, we can't have honest conversation.
Do you think he's doing that though? Is Farage got his fair amount of? No, you've got a point. Is he conceding?
Yeah, particularly on economics. He understands economics, and when he talks about the economics of this country and what a mess we're in, we interviewed him before the war in Ukraine, and he was talking about the energy crisis, and he was talking about how people don't understand what's going to happen to their energy bills, and he was talking about that in March, and it was in November when it hit.
Right.
And he was going, people don't understand what's going to happen. People aren't going to understand what's going to happen to the economy. People aren't going to understand what's going to happen with inflation. And it's all coming, believe me. And then, lo and behold, it came.
Yeah, but then he also, it's just like he says some things that are so fucking... Like,
absolutely.
That I just, I find, and I do find that there's this thing, like you're talking about, he is an amazing politician.
Yeah.
Like, from the way you're explaining it, he is an amazing politician. I don't think someone who's amazing at doing what he's done should be in charge. That's my problem with the infrastructure.
Well, like, it helped because he had one thing that he was trying to focus on. One thing, and he got that done. You know what I mean? Having him in charge of all the things might not be so good.
No, but I mean, like, in a sense of, I think the way that we do politics in debate point scoring. Personally, I don't give a fuck how many kids Boris Johnson has. Why does that matter?
Yeah.
He's in charge of the country.
Yeah.
Right, he's not running things properly. Get him on that.
Yeah.
I don't care if he has sex with loads of people. How does that affect my day? But then we use this point scoring thing, Ed Miliband can't eat a bacon sandwich. Like, why is that? Even there's no secret that my family was big Corbyn supporters and stuff, and we'll be the first people to admit he didn't handle it well. But there was things about Corbyn where it would just be like, what has any of this got to do with his ability to run? And I think there's this thing, now where it's playing a game as a politician, playing this thing, and you have to have a certain level of desire to be in power where you probably shouldn't be in power if that's your... But then I don't know who you put in power. That's the problem.
Yeah, and the other issue is because Corbyn, until the Brexit element, he was absolutely authentic, and he came across as a man of integrity, which is why people really got behind him.
Yeah,
really got behind.
I still say because Grenfell happened, I think a week after that election. If that had happened like 3 weeks before, he'd have won that election.
Oh yeah,
because the way Theresa May and the Conservative Party handled that was so inhumane. Yeah, that I think the country would have just immediately swung towards him.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree.
He could have won just being pro Brexit, but if he explained it in his way, surely.
Maybe if he said a little bit less about the Jews as well. Maybe if he just couldn't. The problem with that was
they own so much stuff, though, Elliot.
he was really doing it before Kanye.
No, because I don't think he would say. He would just go visit a mural that was weird. He would just be in the wrong places all the time.
What happened with that is, my dad was a big part of the anti-Iraq war movement, and what happens is, in comedy, if I go, oh, Francis, Mike, I'm putting on a benefit night for a local school, would you come down and do it? And then one of the teachers gets up to say something. A few years later, the gig's brought up because the teacher's caught because he was, I don't know, being a nonce or something. And they go, Francis Rosa and Michael Adewale were gigging with it. You had no idea. And that's what happened with the Iraq war stuff is, there was a little where people would go oh, and we're going to get some imam from the local mosque, and he'll come up, and then years later they'll be like, this guy who said that we should make Jew casserole.
With his hook hands.
And then you go, wait, what? That's what I think happened to Corbyn, where he wasn't ever meant to be a front bench politician.
No,
he wasn't meant to have that brought up that wasn't meant to be under that level of scrutiny.
Yeah.
And the papers, I think the way you see the machine, that's what I found worrying about at the time, was the way you see the machine in this country work, similarly with Donald Trump, is something happens where the media and the people in charge sort of work together and choose a side and go, we can't fucking have this. So it doesn't matter at what cost. I'm sure if you look at those people now, they're like, they were the people who turned against Boris Johnson very quickly when they realised Boris was bad for business.
Do you think people are more savvy to media manipulation?
Yes, I think we've fundamentally lost our trust in media. I think 20 to 30 years ago, if you saw something on the BBC, if you saw something on TV, if it was in print journalism, publications like the New York Times or the Guardian, there was a point where we do these improvised live shows on Triggernometry where we just bring up a Guardian article and just read it out, and we'd both be pissing ourselves because it was that ridiculous as a piece of journalism. I think we've got to the point now, which is why podcasts have become so successful, where Joe Rogan gets far more viewers than MSNBC and CNN combined, is because they know that, look, fake news or whatever you want to call it, there's a term for it. There's fake news. I can't remember the other thing, right? And the reality is, not everything that you're being told is true. It doesn't matter what source you're getting it from. Not everything you're being told is being true. But people look at people like Joe, and they know that Joe's authentic. I've met Joe. What you see with Joe is what you get. The bloke you see on your screen is a bloke you meet and have a smoke with afterwards. That is the bloke. You've met people in TV. How many times can you say about people on TV?
Yeah. They've got their spin to put on it. They've got advertisers shit to worry about. And
when you were going into Rogan's studio, was that quite a surreal moment?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was like watching a live animatronic doll come alive in front of you. You're like, is this fucking real?
Yeah, and because you guys did like 4.5 hours.
Yeah,
that must have been like such a cool like thing to sit in there and be like, because I'd be if I went in, I'd be in there, and then there for like an hour and a half. He was like, anyway, thanks for coming on, man.
Do you know? I didn't notice this, like, but you know, Konstantin was saying like there were times where he was looking at his watch, and Konstantin said like every time Rogan looked at his watch, he just felt his guts go.
Oh fuck! But he seemed to love it. Like he seemed like to, but fuck me, man. That must. Yeah,
that's
a long time. That must have been such a fucking cool experience.
It was because it felt kind of like a journey. So like we opened like with grooming gangs.
Yeah.
Just open
strong
with
start.
And then he got into the non stuff. Right, and he was talking about nonsense, which is my specialist subject. So I'm like, hang on a minute, mate. Hang on a minute, that's wrong. And he went, Jamie, fact check that shit. And I thought, oh fuck, right? I'm on the biggest fucking podcast in the world. And then we did about 2 hours, and then like he went, do you want to join? And then he pulled out this blunt cigar, and it's the most beautiful weed I've ever smoked. Wow. Have you ever smoked or eaten something that no poor person has got within a mile radius of? Do you know that? They've never even, and I've never had it, and I just smoked it, and it just, you know when you see in the movies weed, and it just like, and it was that beautiful feeling.
Shit.
And then we just started, and then we just had and then it became a conversation with him, and then, because I'm a big fight fan, like more boxing, Konstantin's more into MMA. And I'd just never seen anyone in that space have an honest discussion about CTE.
Yeah.
Do you know what CTE is?
Yeah, brain damage.
Yeah, and amongst fighters. And I thought, well, let's just do it, man. Let's just have this chat. And then we were talking back and forth, and it was just brilliant. It was just brilliant because I'd never seen anybody have an honest conversation, particularly someone who's that involved and has so much involved in the game. But he's also, you know, got integrity. And Joe will even say himself, the reason why he quit fighting is because he was worried about brain damage.
Really?
I always find that interesting when I listen to him, and he will have like a criticism of the UFC and like a bit of business practice. That to me like says a lot, because I'm like, oh, that's like a big paycheck for you, and you're a big part of the business. And he obviously has such a relationship with Dana White, where Dana kind of knows. Yeah, Joe's got his opinions, but I imagine Dana White's a bit like, fuck him. Like, I don't, like, because he's so big. But I also like think that's amazing that Joe can come out and sort of go, like, Joe Rogan can come out and go, you know, I think the UFC's doing this badly, and I think there needs to be a change in the gloves and all of this
What
stuff.
is the practical solution then? Because some people are like, oh, we got to ban this shit. You can't ban boxing.
Oh, man, you know, to me, right, the people who like think, like, are you into a UFC?
Nah, no, it's boxing.
Okay, so there's a fighter called Jorge Masvidal, right?
Yeah.
He's a maniac. The guy's a fucking maniac, right? Yeah. Okay, he's a Cuban guy. He's a nutcase.
Street Jesus.
Yeah, and before he got into the UFC, you can see this on YouTube. He was doing fights in people's back gardens.
He was not street beefs, but he came through like the Kimbo Slice wave, like in Miami. Yeah.
Okay.
So, if you think back to ancient Greece, like Jorge, he would be Achilles. He'd have a statue up to him. You know, we'd all be there, cheering him on. These are what these people are. These are bred to be. They're maniacs.
They need this.
Yeah, they're bred to be fighters. That's what they are. You know, I remember I was talking. He's not a professional. He like my producer's. He was a Scouser actually. His brother, right, does cage fighting.
Yeah.
For fun, and he goes to me. You know, if I don't fight at least once a month, I get depressed.
Yeah.
Because it's also the training, that thing to look forward to.
I know that with a lot of, especially men, where they haven't got, it's a very, almost like ancient and understandable way of like, very simple way of just understanding the most basic of life concepts. You know? Yeah. Like I apply everything to like what I learned. Like jiu-jitsu has this really simple formula. You're a white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt, but even as a black belt, you know, Owen, we had one of the world's best jiu-jitsu fighters in here, Owen Flanagan. Like his black belt is different to some 35-year-old who's like a hobbyist, who's got his black. There's still difference, you know. Like in stand up, I always say it, there's like a white belt stage, which is open micing, and then the worst stage is being a blue belt, where you're not quite professional, but you're not an open micer.
Yeah.
And that's in jiu-jitsu, people really struggle with that phase as a blue belt.
Transition.
And that is sort of, I think, applicable to, you can strip that back and apply that to anything in life. And some people just need that. Sort of in the similar way myself, need that said in the most simple of forms. Like, listen, dummy, you have to come down and train and apply yourself and do something to get to that level. You can't just come in here and beat that person who's been doing it for years.
In terms of the brain damage, what do you do?
What do you do? I think you have to accept. I think this is a problem. Is the reality is dementia is an awful, awful illness, and you see particularly a lot of American footballers. You've got it with rugby players now. People like Alex Popham. I can't remember the name. He played Steve Thompson, who played hooker for England in the 2003 World Cup, won the World Cup. Steve Thompson, I think, is about 47. He's got dementia. He's got no knowledge of winning the World Cup. He's got no memory of it. He's got no memory of practically any of his rugby career. He met the Queen, doesn't remember. So it's a very difficult subject. But the reality is, it's, look, think about a lot of these guys, people who become fighters. What else would they have done? What else would they got
into fights?
Yeah, they would have got into
fights.
fights.
Same thing.
Yeah, they would have got into fights.
Because a lot of them from working class backgrounds.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's almost like with someone like that rugby player you're talking about? Have we got much longer, Lucas?
We've done an hour, but you can go on for a little bit.
Oh, cheers, thank you. Do you think that there's like, you're talking about that rugby player there?
Yeah.
Do you think that you can make the argument at that time to him that you want something so much? Like, I remember listening to Quentin Tarantino talk about Pulp Fiction, that if someone went to him, after you finish this film, I kill you, would you still finish it? And he was like, yeah. Like, that's how much this means to me. Could you ask him at the time, you're going to get dementia, you're going to get something, but that achievement, that thing doing it is worth, I smoke a vape.
Yeah.
That's not the same as winning a World Cup, and I'm probably going to not be doing this podcast much longer if I continue. But I choose to do it because of something that I gain out of it. Do you reckon there's an argument you could say that to those people?
Of course. And I think deep down, most, especially fighters, know that when you step in the ring, that's a deal with the devil. You know that you could come out. It doesn't matter how good a fighter you are. Like, it's before your time, there was a fighter called Michael Watson, who was a brilliant middleweight, and he went in against Eubank.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I know this story.
Yeah, and he was beating Eubank and Eubank hit him with one punch, and what Michael Watson's life was changed forever, and he was disabled for the rest of his life. That. The moment you step in the ring, you know that and you understand that. But for a certain type of man, the rewards are so great that, and if that is what you want, and if that is what you seek, then do we really have the right to stand in the way?
Yeah, I do think that with fighting is, I almost feel like now with the amount of level of the CTE stuff that people know and is common with, you understand that going into it. Yeah. That when people didn't know. But I get, you didn't have to be fucking Einstein to work out that probably being punched in the face every night wasn't gonna lead to a lasting life.
We've got a lot of focus on the individuals. There are a lot of, the organizations, there's a lot of money behind these things, and you wonder on their side how much pressure is put on to maybe, turn over and fight again when you're not maybe feeling too good.
It's a big problem in the UFC because of the fighter pay as well. Some of them are only on $15,000 a fight.
Really?
Yeah. And that's before taxes and
training camp
and probably agent cut.
So you'd wonder how many players, when it comes to stuff when they're not feeling right, they keep quiet about it because they're like, you know what,
Yeah, and it's also as well, the danger comes when you start to become more susceptible to getting knocked out. Because normally it happens, you get knocked out for the first time and then you become more susceptible. And what is that? That's a sign of brain damage. There's a rugby player, a very talented rugby player, again, in the England team called Lewis Moody. And people were saying, by the end of Lewis Moody's career, you could just practically just tap him on the head and he'd be out.
Fuck,
that's not good.
Yeah. So, and the problem comes is when you've been a fighter all your life, that's all you can really do. At that point, you're on the way down. But you need the money, and you're not right, and you know there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And you still got to get in that ring, and you know that there's going to, you know, let's say you're a boxer and you were once great.
Yeah.
That you could be going in a ring against a future 19-year-old Tyson. That's only going to end one way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched I like Mike Tyson's podcast, and he had an interview with Evander Holyfield, who's here a bit off, and I thought this is going to be really interesting. Evander Holyfield has been hit one too many times. You click on it and you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna.
You're gonna back out of this one.
And but yeah, you could. I do think that is the sort of deal they make with it. Have you spoke to people on trigonometry about like the? You know, I imagine like.
We've got Dan Hardy coming on next week.
Really?
Yeah. So
that?
Dan.
Fighter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we've got the MMA fighter. So we've got Dan Hardy coming on next week. So I'm going to be having this conversation with Dan. I think this is an interesting conversation to be having.
Yeah, it's a huge thing within the sports. Within the sport, they're gonna in football. I reckon in 15 years you won't be allowed to head the ball. Yeah. They'll get that out of there. They're not going to allow that anymore. That's going to be a thing of the past. They already don't allow it in like. It has to be like 12 plus for you to be able to head the ball. Because they're working out all these footballers are getting dementia because they headed the ball, you know, at like insane the neck power that they throw into it, and they jump in front of a shot and stuff. You know, that can't be. But again, it's like
I want to watch it.
I want to watch it. I know that's the problem. Like I don't really know this guy.
Yeah.
And I clear the fucking ball. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I want us to win the World Cup more than I want you to know the faces of your kids. That's the dilemma.
But it's true.
I'm being honest.
Yeah. And you know what?
Chris Benoit was entertaining. He was a good wrestler.
I was Wikipedia that the other day. That was so fucked up.
Yeah, that's really fucked up.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. You were...
No. And I was going to say, but the reason that's funny is because it's honest.
Yeah.
It's honest. And you know what? If you look at those footballers, you know, particularly the ones who are better in the air, and you said to them, like, take someone like, I don't know, like Wilfred Zaha, Thornton Heath.
Yeah.
You know, Thornton Heath is, you know, I used to live near there. It's a tough part of the world.
Yeah.
What would Wilfred be doing now if he wasn't playing football?
He's already so angry.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got the neck tattoo, man. Do you know what I mean? The neck tattoo is just instant anger.
You ever watch a Crystal Palace game and just, I seen one, like, he's so fucking angry with his eyes.
He wants to be favorite. It was like the fans have to tell him to calm down. It's just the foot and Heath in him, man. It's just, that area is just, that's the last bit that we're waiting for it to be gentrified. They've done Crystal Palace, they're doing South Norwood, and we're like, come on, Fort and Heath.
No, it's never going to happen, man.
We do have to wrap up in a bit, but I don't know what I want to ask you now. Who's been the best guest you had so far? It's got to be Bert, right?
Burr is, look, I'll be honest with you, man. Like, meeting Burr, I was a fangirl.
Well, yeah.
He turned up in a black Ford Mustang.
Great.
Walked in. How you doing?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's what I want. That's what I want from Bill fucking Burr. I want him to turn up in a Ford Mustang.
And those Patrice stories, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I met him once very briefly in Edinburgh, and he'd been doing a show in Edinburgh, and it was just, I was out having a smoke and he was there, and I was like, I might not get to meet Bill Burr again. So I just went up, I was like, look, man, I was in like the arts bar, I was like, nice to meet you, like, I'm just a big fan. The reason I got into one of the people who've inspired me most in comedy, and he went like, how old are you? I was like 19, and he went, man, I hope we do a show together one day. And then I walked away out of like, I went, thank you, man, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. But I've always had in my head, I'd love to meet him and go, hey, do you remember? And he'd be like, oh, you're that annoying fucking guy. You know? But that's amazing that he just turned up and was like...
He was fucking cool.
Is it really hard to keep your cool in front of some of these people?
It's sometimes, Bill Burr it was. Burr it was. It was with Burr. Rogan was more surreal than anything else.
He's like so famous. Like, that is like, it's so weird. It's like it'd be like meeting like almost like Tom Cruise or something. You go, like you see them do something like put a kettle on. You'd be like, I didn't know you did that.
Yeah,
like, you couldn't imagine them doing something normal. Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like Joe Rogan uses reading glasses.
What the fuck? Yeah.
Like, Joe, don't do that, man. Do you know what I mean?
Don't be a human.
Yeah, it's like seeing the stripper pick up her kids, man. Don't do that. It's just killing the image.
The illusion has been ruined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The illusion has been. But I tell you what. The one who impressed me the most out of practically everyone that I've met is, and there have been lots of people who've impressed me, but the one who's probably impressed me the most, there's two people. One was Sam Harris. I don't know if you know Sam.
I'm a big fan of Sam Harris. I used to love him on Twitter.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Anyway, everyone does that. One of my best mates, every time I see him, is like, thanks for ruining Sam Harris for me, Francis. But he's just a really good guy.
He seems really cool.
He's a really good guy. We were having serious tech problems, and we were setting up for him, and he's one of our biggest ever guests. And our producer, like, you could just see, like, he just went white and there was sweat dripping. And he'd been trying to fix it for an hour, and he was just like, man, I can't. Look, we're just going to have to do it. And Sam just went, take your time. I put the entire afternoon off. It's going to be fine. Sort it out. And he did some weird Jedi mind stuff. In 5 minutes, it worked perfectly. We did it. And he was chatting with us for about half an hour before, talking about how much he loves comedy, and he gave us about 2.5 hours of his time.
Wow.
I love that.
It is to be expected from him a little bit, though. I'd hate to see Sam Harris and, like, someone's fucking up with tech and he goes, listen, you cunt. Sort it out. Now, like, you'd be a bit like, whoa, dude, you need to... You're the guy on my app who tells me to chill out. You can't.
And the other person is Theo Von.
Theo Von. I met Theo Von once as well. I was opening for him.
Oh, did you own for Theo?
Yeah, my girlfriend Darcy is going to hate me telling this story. We were, like, very new in our relationship. We'd been going out for 4 months. I'm a massive Theo Von fan, as is she. I got, like, the message to open for him. But I was just put there as the opener that he was given. There was no, like... And he brought his other mate, funny lad called Ari Manis. So I kind of had to go on, do 10 minutes, bring Ari on, break, do 5 minutes, bring Theo on. So I was kind of an MC at, like, massive gig. Yeah. I turned up with my girlfriend, I got there, I was like, hey, have you guys, I messaged in the day, have you guys got a ticket for my girlfriend? They were like, yeah. It was someone at this venue, then just took us up and put us both in the green room before, like, with Theo and Ari. I don't know Theo and Ari, but at least I'm a comic.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I like, could feel there was a little bit of the, like, why is this comic just bringing his girlfriend in here? And they actually really got on. Everything was fine. But you know that thing of, like, someone bringing someone into... First of all, I probably should be in a separate green room anyway. Because I don't know these guys. They probably want their own space. Yeah. But then to be seen bringing someone else into the green room as well, pre-show.
Yeah.
Nothing, my girlfriend didn't do anything to embarrass herself or anything like that. She actually really got on with Theo. But I could just feel this little bit of, like, oh, I hope I can meet him again so I can one day go, hey, by the way, man, I didn't, like, me meeting my heroes needs me meeting them a second time to explain the first meeting. You know that thing? To just go, I didn't bring us in there to, I wasn't trying to hang out with you guys before a show. Like,
completely. But the thing that impressed me about Theo is on stage, I think he's the most naturally talented comedian I've ever seen. I've never seen someone like that. I saw him at Rogan's Club on a stool in front of 300 pissed up rowdy people, and he ripped it from beginning to end. Ripped it while sitting on a stool and talking. I've never seen anyone do that. I've seen lots of people try. You know, I've never seen anyone do that. And he's super sound. Very humble, very down to earth, really nice dude.
Last question. Who's your dream guest and why is it Joe Biden?
Well, it'd be good. You do the interview where he just dies in front of us. 12 million views. Joe?
Man, you would want to be the podcast that had Joe Biden die. Every time that clip's there, your little thumbnails in the corner going, we did it, baby.
All-time favourite guest that I'd love to do. There's a couple. Chris Rock, because he doesn't seem to do podcasts. But probably Chappelle.
Of course.
I don't think there's anyone I would like. I think Chappelle would be I'm just thinking of myself here. Chappelle would be great until I had to do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like until I'm sat there and just going, what the fuck am I going to say to you, man? Like, you know, that.
But you've got to remember as well, like I had that exact same thing when I was interviewing Burr, and then you just go, he's just a dude.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He's just a dude. Once you get all the way past it, like I remember, like when I was chatting with him, it felt like on as a first date. Don't say anything stupid. Don't say anything stupid. Don't do this. Don't do that. And then we were just talking about like the music that he meditates to, and when he took mushrooms.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And you just go, he's just a fucking bloke. Do you know? And he's either sound with it or he's not.
Yeah.
And if he's not sound with it, then
Find another topic, you know.
yeah, exactly. And it's fine.
Yeah, there was another comedian who interviewed him on a podcast, a British podcast thing, and they, I like this podcast, well, I won't say it is, but they got a bit pressy with like some issues with Burr, and you could literally like
Oh,
feel,
Stu Goldsmith, yeah.
Okay, there we go. You could literally feel Burr being like, dude, I fucking answered, like you could see him like getting
Yeah,
like, and you're
yeah.
like, don't do this to Bill.
Yeah.
Like he seems like, you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
This is, but Francis, man, thank you for your time, and thank you for
it's a
coming in,
pleasure.
man. And like, you know, like, thank you so much for doing this.
No, it's a pleasure, man, and thank you. And look, guys, you've got a great podcast. Keep doing what you're fucking doing. Keep building your audience. Like, the more you build your audience, the more we build our audiences. You know, everybody pulls it together because we need to start our own scene, just like they do in America.
Yeah.
And we need to get out the mindset that we have to rely on agents, that we rely on industry. We create our own
We're
opportunities.
going to raid your contact list for philosophers.
Our dream guest is Slavoj Zizek.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'd love Slavoj Zizek.
No, we haven't had him. We're gonna. Hopefully, we'll get him on soon.
I'd love to get Slavoj Zizek just to sit in front of a philosopher, one of my favourite philosophers, and then realise very quickly the mistake he's made. Coming on a podcast where we don't really understand philosophy at all.
Yeah.
But thank you guys. Sign up to the Patreon if you enjoyed the episode. We've got some extra episodes coming about. We're both in America, so I don't know, by the time you hear this, we're away. We're on holiday, so
You know what I mean?
No, man, just say you're going for work. It sounds better.
Going for work.
We're going
Yeah,
for
yeah,
work.
we're going global.
We're going for work. We're going on Rogan. We're not invited. We're turning up.
John, mate.
But thank you very much. I've been Edit Still.
Michael Odewale.
No, there we go. Enough, mate. All right.
The beginning and end. Oh, man, that was amazing, man.